batteries are the missing piece of puzzle in the energy transition. I feel that batteries are like a time machine for electrification purposes, because I strongly believe that after solar and wind, the one big change that, or let's say, one big phenomenon that has happened in our energy world is batteries. So when I say batteries, it's all kinds of batteries which can store electricity, heat, and of course the transport part is also quite an important aspect, given that it is, I think, 15 to 20% of demand, or at least the CO2 emissions that we normally measure throughout the world comes from the transport sector. I believe for this generation side, for the demand side, and for the transportation side, I believe battery is one of the most important aspect, or acting as the time machine for these three sectors, and can bring all these three sectors together. So that's also an amazing thing that batteries can do, and that's the reason I feel it's the missing piece of puzzle in the energy transition.
Crispy Perspectives. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the season 2 of Perspective Club. In this season, we have focused on the future of energy. And in this episode, we are very fortunate to have with us Swagat, who is our energy, grid, and battery expert. Swagat, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sahil and Kedar, for this amazing opportunity. Yeah, it's my first time on a podcast, so I'm really thrilled to, be with you here.
Yes, Swagat. And I assure you, this first will not be your last. And with me, fortunately, I have my co host, Kedar, who is also an energy expert, and we have had multiple episodes with him during the season. Also, Kedar, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. And it's great to be doing an episode with both of you and getting more insights from Swagat today.
Awesome. And as always, I'm Sahil, your host for the season 2, and excited to begin this episode on the future of grids, batteries, and energy. So let's begin the episode with this, Swagat. Assume that you were the energy minister of this planet Earth. What would be the future of energy according to you?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. From my perspective, energy is a very, big topic. So there are three sides to it. One is the demand side, the other one is the generation side, and the third one is the transportation sector. Energy in total comprises of these three, in my opinion. And yeah, if I were the energy minister for the for the world, then I will definitely have these three sectors in mind, and look into how we can bring these three sectors together using the technology like batteries. So that would be my first job. And then I believe, whenever you think about batteries, you tend to think it is the normal lithium-ion battery that you have in your mobile phones, or in a camera or whatever. But I usually think about batteries from a bigger perspective. There could be technologies like hydro, which stores like gigawatt hours at a single location, or it could be long duration storage technologies like vanadium, or flow technologies, or so on. Or it could be something like thermal storage batteries, where you can store heat. And the most the technology which is creating the most noise nowadays is the lithium ion, of course. because of the constant price reduction, and everyone across the world looking to take strategic position in order to dominate this lithium-ion industry. So it always is in the front page in the newspaper. But if you scroll through the newspaper, you will find that energy storage is a much bigger topic beyond this lithium ion. So if I was the energy minister, I would try to look at all these technologies on the same page, basically at the same level, and not prioritize one over the other, make it a fair play for all the technologies. I am not a person who will bring maybe a big change at the first day in the office, but I will definitely lay the foundations for years to come. I will also maybe try to work together with education minister, to be honest, because I believe in our education, we do not lay enough emphasis on the energy sector and the role of technologies like solar, wind, and batteries, or even hydro, and what are the advantages, disadvantages of nuclear, gas generation, and so on. Rather, everyone tends to look at the social media and tend to think, okay, one is good or bad, but rather we should try to put this into our curriculums and let the students themselves explore these technologies and come to a conclusion by working together with everyone. So maybe that's the way. Yeah, as an energy minister, I wouldn't like to be in a silos, but rather work with the, with the transport minister, with the education minister, and so on. So that's how I would like to lay the foundation for the global energy order going forward.
Swagat, that's a great introduction. I think a very succinctly put introduction. And you already led into the next point of discussion that I had in mind. So you are now the energy minister for the world, and you do have a certain way or a certain form or a certain order in which you want to set up the energy mix of the world. But flipping it to the other side, you've had the opportunity to work with international markets, more specifically European markets, and see a lot of the aspects of the energy transition that's happening right now. A lot of decisions being made, both from policymakers, from technology creators, and from financial investors. What are the mistakes that you see, or what are the missteps that you see that you would not want to replicate when you are the energy minister?
I think one, let's say, important thing that we're seeing in today's world is a very fast transition to renewables, and this comes with its own, let's say, advantages and disadvantages. Advantages being, yeah, it's very cheap, it's very abundant. I mean, you have free energy available, which is coming from from the sun, from the movement of the earth, and so on. So the wind, this when this energy feeds into your grid, it of course creates a bit of a, let's say, transient kind of energy. So it's not like nuclear or gas energy generation, where you have constant electricity being generated. But rather it is much more variable according to time, and time of the day, and day in the year. This creates a bit of let's say instability in the grid itself, or lack of inertia in the grid itself. And then you need some technologies like batteries, which can support you, so that if you really want to move into a 100% renewable energy future, then you would also need enough batteries which can support you in that transition. I think if one of the mistakes that I would definitely try to avoid is slowing down the energy transition, just because I feel the current economics is not working out, but rather take a longer view, because the reality that we are sitting upon is the temperatures are rising everywhere. The monsoons, the winters, the summers are shifting their patterns. They are not appearing at the time that they should appear at, and this creates a lot of imbalance in the nature, which can create natural disasters or hazards for the future generations. In that respect, I will definitely say that maybe it's a loss-making business today, but if you keep working at it, humans always come up with innovations, and we are always exploring things, right? So give a bit of push in that direction, and there would be innovations which can make renewable generation 24/7 possible. Yeah, this would be one of the things. And second thing is not budge in to lobbyists who might pull you in one direction or the other for their own financial benefits or something. Yeah, but rather think more from the perspective of I am a child of this earth, so what do I need to do so that I preserve this for the future generations, and also for the current generation, more importantly. These are let's say two things that I will say on an overview. But in the current world order, it's always trying to let's say secure your position in the supply chain, and for example, in Europe, Europe was highly dependent on gas generation for a long time, and all of a sudden, the Russia-Ukraine war happened, and they decided to shut off all the pipelines from Russia, which costed them quite badly, I would say, and they were not really prepared to take that blow. So in that meantime, energy prices shot up, which still is high in Europe overall, but they are still not ready with enough backup which can fill up the lack of gas generation. This happened because they were very much reliant on gas generation for a long time without having looked at all the technologies from an equal point of view. If they had done so, they would definitely have had options to exercise, which unfortunately didn't happen, and now it's a crisis situation in Europe regarding energy. So that is a situation I would definitely try to avoid. And then there are things regarding grid readiness, right? So okay, now if I even try to put a full focus on renewables, I still wouldn't be able to do so. The reason is that the grid is currently not designed for renewables. It's basically designed for conventional generation plants, where okay, if you call upon 10 megawatts in the next hour, you get 10 megawatts. Whereas with renewables, it's not the case. It's highly dependent on the generation from solar and wind mainly. And also there's of course biogas, which can provide a certain extent of stable energy, but it's not enough to go on a big scale, so to say. So that would be some of the aspects that I would look at. So basically making the grid ready, and because right now it is already a crisis situation, and the grid is still like 50 or 100 years old, and not able to take the kind of variable generation that renewables bring in.
Amazing. What I like about this is you have a very optimistic view of the world, while your policies are also persuasive. But while we are talking policies, I would still ask, what would your policies or what would your policy recommendations be to the entire world in terms of energy security? And also maybe you could bring in your batteries aspect, which you introduced in the beginning. And this is typically because across the world, we are still talking in terms where there is electrification, where you have an electric connection in your house, but it's not necessary that you have access to electricity 24/7. So in that aspect, what energy policies would you, as the energy minister of the world, introduce?
I think the topic of energy security is very important. To be honest, when I initially stepped into the battery sector, which was roughly 4 years ago, I had an impression that batteries can save the world today, but slowly, I understood that the reality is very far from that. There are things like energy security which has to be taken into account. Otherwise, you will have a lot of blackouts, and no power coming out of the socket 24/7. that kind of situations. So in the current generation mix that we have, and the current readiness of the grid that we have, I believe there is enough space for all technologies, be it the conventional power plants, be it renewables. Everyone has their space, and it should be like that, because as I mentioned, if I try to go renewables today, it's not a reality. As a policy minister, maybe I'm sitting in a comfortable chair and doing the decisions, but in reality, there has to be engineers on field building these grids for you, and there has to be industries which have to get power 24/7, and also citizens, in order to have a good quality of life, they also need to have 24/7 availability of power. So if I think from very neutral perspective, I still think in the current generation mix, we still have to have a good, let's say, proportion of fossil powered generation. Then there should be a good mix of gas generation, which can ramp up and ramp down as and when needed for grid stability. And there should also be at least let's say 30 to 40% of renewables in that mix. And then when you have 30 to 40% of renewables, you of course come with a lot of variable generation in the mix, and then you need to have batteries there, and these batteries can be used for multiple purposes, like initially for the short term power market fluctuations, so something called as ancillary services, or wholesale markets. And then you have sectors like seasonal storage or long duration storage, because you would need there are some days where wind doesn't blow at all, or in Germany it's called Dunkelflaute, where there is no renewable generation happening for certain period of time. And then for this certain period of time, it's not couple of hours that we are talking about, it could be multiple days. And then for these days, you cannot have a single technology of battery supporting it, unfortunately. So you need to have longer duration storages or seasonal storages, which can support this, so that you have the supply of security of supply. So yeah, I will definitely try to have all the technologies available at the optimum levels, with the optimum efficiency, in order to have a good and stable grid for today. Of course, moving forward, I would definitely like to have 100% renewables, because that's where we are heading to. But that will take its time, and a lot of things have to happen in the background for that.
That was an exceptional statement that you've made. You want to head towards a goal of having 100% renewables, and this matches with your earlier statement that the end game should be us having a greener future that we leave behind for the next generations. But this also then contradicts directly to Sahil's question about energy security, because when you're looking at a status quo where you have a system run or dominated by renewables, you always have the variability that comes into play, right? So you don't have this assurance of supply that you do with, let's say, a coal power plant or a gas power plant or a nuclear power plant, where you can either ramp up or down, of course, in different rates to match with demand. But with the sun or with the wind, it is just the fact that when the sun shines, you will get tons of electricity, and when the sun doesn't shine, you will get zero electricity, regardless of how many gigawatts or terawatts you have installed. So are you then going to mandate countries to install more batteries, or would you see it differently?
And add to that, sorry to interrupt before you start, Swagat. First of all, your answer was very imaginative. And second is, while Kedar brings up the battery aspect, can you also highlight if bringing in batteries will also bring in some opportunity for microgrids? That is, in remote areas or even within larger cities and populations, you could still have microgrids which can be powered by these storage devices of any kind.
Yeah, sure. I think the aspect of energy security and renewables, as of today, might be looked as two different sides of a coin. But the reality is that 100% renewables is needed. How do we do that is a matter of question. And in my opinion, as I initially mentioned in the podcast, there are various different technologies for energy storage which are available. And this intermittency that you spoke about, Kedar, before, that is to be taken into account, definitely. But look at it from this aspect, that if you can store the solar, maybe you have enough solar built, maybe you have overbuilt the solar, which is making it possible to, let's say, put enough energy into batteries, which can be made later made use of. So the batteries that I'm speaking about are, also long duration storages, which will be necessary for this kind of scenario to happen. So in the current scenario, it's a utopian imagination to have 100% renewables. I don't believe it's possible as of today, but in the future, when we have all those long duration storages readily available at mass, then I think it is definitely possible. So I am very optimistic about it. And you can also have hydro in the mix, which can bring good amount of, let's say, long duration storage possible. And it can also give you constant power that you are looking at. In China, for example, they recently inaugurated the largest hydro power plant. What they do is they are using solar and wind in order to pump the water in the reservoir, and then release it later for constant power for very long duration in the year. So I'm looking at this kind of, let's say, bold initiatives which countries have to take, and that's when the 100% renewables would be possible going forwards. So China has taken the lead there, but I believe everyone else should also follow suit quite quickly. And with respect to the microgrids question, Sahil, that you asked, I think my journey with batteries also started with, basically my dad had bought a solar panel to our home, and we were able to be off grid for certain periods of time. And that's when I thought, okay, this is something, it's like a boon for so many people out there. So if you can be off grid with your own solar generation, and then have a small battery to back you up, that could be like really nice situation if you can make it affordable for everyone. And if you can pool all of these smaller batteries together, which is also off grid, then you make your own virtual power plant kind of thing. And I think you have the energy independence that you're seeking in a very cost effective manner. So I believe this is kind of a sustainable solution. But for that to happen, there has to be a lot of, let's say, policy wise, there has to be a lot of support. There has to be a support from technology availability for everyone, as well as the cost has to be at a place where everyone, even people from not so well-to-do background can also afford this. So I think if that is the case, then microgrids are also a good
Want to be
solution to
off
have.
grid, yeah.
I also
That's
want to
the
be off
dream
grid
for all of us, I guess,
at some
especially with all of this unpredictability
time in
going
my life
around. And
for a
I
long
think it
duration.
was really key what
That
you
would be
mentioned. So
really
you
cool,
would
I'd say.
have a policy that enables further battery buildup along with further buildup of additional storage indirectly, like hydropower. And we have to also keep in mind when we're talking about batteries and solar and wind, that we always talk about the generation on one side, we talk about the storage on one side, but then we forget the transmission in between. So there is also the fact that all of this power has to be routed through lines which are about on average 50 years old, which also then have to be upgraded. So the investment part, then you tied it in neatly, that you need a lot of investment. So you need a lot of investment in the generation side, transmission and storage, at the same time while maintaining reliability of supply, right? So that people don't wake up one day and see, boom, oh, my electricity bill has gone up. So that is, I think, heart of policy making. That's what makes it so unique or so complex to deal with policy. But let's bring it back to the battery topic as well. Now focusing more on storage and maybe more specifically electrochemical storage. You are taking your role again now as energy minister. You're looking at storage. You want to implement storage. You want to build out that storage. We've heard a lot about battery chemistries going around. People talk about lithium, people talk about sodium, people talk about zinc, solid state, and so on. what chemistry do you see winning out, let's say over the next 5 years, or the next then 5 to 10 years, and then so on? And what are the factors that will lead to these chemistries dominating? Is it purely cost, or is there something else attached to it?
Yeah. So what I see is that okay, maybe I might be making a controversial statement here, but I believe that lithium-ion batteries are going to stay here for a long time, and especially for grid-scale storage. It is going to be here for a while. Maybe for electric transportation. So for electric vehicles, we might switch to a better chemistry, which is like solid state or something. But we need to keep one thing in mind, that for any technology to be to come out of that pilot stage until mass production and mass adaptability, it takes its own time, and every technology has to go through that curve, where it initially is adopted by some very enthusiastic people, let's call them innovators, and then there are the mass adoption, basically. Yeah, there's a skeptical period as well, where people start thinking, okay, maybe this is not the right technology or so. Then they try switching between technologies, but then they see, okay, one of the technologies is leading the way, and then that's when the mass adaptation happens. And when that happens, it stays for a long time, and then of course it comes down, because as I initially mentioned, we humans are very innovative. We start exploring things, and then we will definitely not sit quiet, right? So our research departments will come up with a new technology. So that's when this technology, which was let's say mass adopted, it will come down gradually at some point, and then just be part of the mix. So in that respect, I believe at least for for the generation side, for grid scale storage batteries and so on, I still believe lithium ion will be here for at least 30 to 40 years going forward. And maybe sodium ion will also compete very strongly with the lithium ion batteries in that regard. And yeah, by that time we might already have solid state batteries for electric transport side of things. What I believe might not work out well are technologies which do not have strong research background, or do not have strong supply chain advantages. So I see these things slowly diminishing, or not playing a major part. Of course there could be pilot projects here and there. I'm not talking about that, but every technology has to be mass adopted for them, for it to be relevant for a long time. So there I feel supply chain plays a big role. So today, lithium ion, why is it it's basically so famous, is because the supply chain is strong, I would say, and it has gone through all of these initial let's say phases, and now it is in the maturity phase. I would say it is just climbing that ladder. And in the next 10 years, I believe it will be going into the mass adaptation side of things. And the reason I believe is that major powers across the world have they have good control on these technologies. So when I say control, they are able to manage all aspects of the supply chain, starting from the mining to second life usage of the batteries. So they have complete dominance there. So yeah, I do not see let's say that dying down, or any other technology at the current stage being able to match that, just like lithium ion. And it's the cost of the abundance of materials, right? So that's also important. So lithium ion is actually quite abundant in that respect. It's just that it is not available to everyone. So that's the reason not everyone is able to build the supply chain for themselves. Everyone is dependent on countries like China, Australia, or the South American countries, where these reserves can be found. But technologies like sodium ion, definitely you have good availability throughout, and this can be a major advantage if certain countries can build their expertise in controlling the supply chain for this technology. and then it will be side to side with the lithium ion, at least for the next 30 40 years, as I see it. But for the transportation sector, as I mentioned, I believe we might go away from NMC, LFP to something like solid state, because there you have a unique challenge of having the technology quite energy dense, and you need to have the cost efficiency as well in mind for mass adaptation.
Swagat, but yeah, we have discussed a lot. I think we started with understanding the overall aspect of the way the batteries work, the grids work, and now we are coming down all the way to understanding battery chemistries. I want to understand, what is the future of grids here onwards? Basically, talking about not just batteries and chemistries and all of that, but how does a grid interact with an energy system? What do batteries function in the middle of grids or microgrids? And how does this lead into energy markets or electricity market?
So whenever a battery is supposed to connect to the grid, right? There are certain things to take into account. So one is the battery ready to connect to the grid in terms of technology, or because the grid is a very let's say risk averse body, right? So it wants to make sure that the technologies that are connecting to it is reliable. So the grid operators always make sure that the grid, the battery that you're connecting to the grid is technically ready for that. So they do a lot of tests before that. They try to see how is the ramp of the battery affecting the grid stability or reliability, because even the grid operators go through a kind of, let's say, knowledge curve, right? They are still in the they're still in the early phase of adopting battery technology. So they still think that, okay, this battery which is able to ramp like I don't know, 4 megawatt per second, maybe it is affecting my grid. It's just it's like a needle which is pricking me. So they want to make sure that the batteries operate in a grid friendly manner. So in German they call it as Netzdienlichkeit. It's a beautiful word for grid friendly operation of batteries. They see how the batteries inject into the grid, or charge from the grid and so on. So once they are comfortable with that, they connect your battery to the grid. And now the question is how the battery actually in reality works. So in reality, operators have to make sure that the ramp of the battery matches with the current grid situation, that it is not congesting the grid at certain nodes. Because if it does that, then the grid has a lot of it takes on a lot of effect. So that is one thing. And second thing is the readiness of the grid itself, because as I mentioned early on, the grids are currently built for the fossil fuel generation, so they are quite comfortable taking on those loads, whereas they are not ready enough for the renewables generation uptake, nor the batteries. So there has to be a quite significant build out of grids, on the medium voltage, on the high voltage level, and so on. And the grids have to be quite interoperable, right? Because you are not living on a, let's say, island where you can have the let's say complete independence of how you operate the grid, but rather how you operate the grid also affects the neighboring countries that you might share your land borders or interconnectors or something like that. So you need to think from that perspective as well. And one thing which actually caught my attention, I think, was when India was trying to build this, I think it was trying to connect the European region to India through through Middle East. So kind of a energy corridor, let's say. And that was like mind boggling. Like if they are able to pull that out, then there is nothing like that, at least in my from my knowledge. Of course, in Europe there are interconnected countries, and there is interconnections between this UK and Europe and so on, but nothing of the scale that of the idea that India put forward. So let's see how that goes. But for that to happen, you need a good infrastructure build out for grids, and considering that batteries will be a big part of that, you need to see how the batteries will interact with the grid, and how it can be, at least in the current, let's say, regulations, the batteries are still considered as a load on the grid, rather taking a neutral perspective that batteries can also offload the grid at certain points, or decongest the grid. So there has to be a lot of changes on the policy side as well. So yeah, I think policy advisors and the grid operators, they all will go through a learning curve, and understand what batteries are able to do and not able to do, and where all they need to take the batteries in. And one of the things that I've seen, at least in Germany, is there are grid booster programs where batteries are directly part of the grid itself, like an extended arm of the grid. So that kind of initiatives are definitely welcome, and I see a lot of potential for such kind of programs, where a 300 or 400 megawatts of battery is part of the high voltage grid. And this is basically replacing the need to build out the grid with bigger transformers or bigger thicker cables or something, but rather have batteries which are much cost efficient, and they are making the batteries part of the grid itself. So I think those kinds of innovations, I really like it, and it should happen throughout the world, in different countries. So what I mean to say is, a grid build out is a cost expensive. It's an expensive exercise, so to say. And For the time being, there are programs like the grid booster program, which I mentioned, which is taking batteries into the grid as if an extended arm. And this is much more cost efficient, and maybe this will replace a lot of costs that go into the grid build out program itself. So what I mean is, let's say it costs I don't know, 10 billion for the grid build out. Maybe you can do it with 6 billion, and an extra 2 billion for battery build out, which means you are still saving 2 billion in the entire program. So that kind of initiative I am speaking. So yeah, batteries have the ability to be to reduce the cost on the grid build out, because they are part of the grid build out, which I'm referring to.
Understood. So effectively hoping that batteries offset offset some of that opportunity cost when it comes to going all out and building a more modernized grid. I also want to know what your opinion is on the use of technology, because we've realized that as we bring more and more renewables, especially, or new age energy sources onto the grid, we need to be much more attentive, much more careful when we are looking at electricity transmission in terms of data, because you never know when there might be a sudden spike, or when there might be a sudden drop in terms of electricity, both voltage, in terms of current, in terms of the resistance that is being offered, in terms of the frequency in which the current is being transmitted. So, and also we also hear the other term, which is most probably going to be the word of the decade, I guess, artificial intelligence. What, in your opinion, is the role that technology should play in this energy transition that we are currently in?
So I would like to mention that machine learning algorithms are already playing a major role. Firstly, in terms of understanding how to minimize the error that comes up with the renewable generation, so solar and wind generation forecasting error minimization, and it's a big research topic, by the way. And companies are putting millions of dollars in order to understand this better. The reason is that even with this forecasting error, batteries are able to make a lot of money out of it in the energy exchange markets, at least in advanced markets like UK, US, and Europe. We have seen instances where, based on this forecasting error, batteries have been able to position themselves such that they take this price spread, and they have made some money there. So that's the first thing, where machine learning algorithms are already playing a role in order to reduce this error. The second thing is how the batteries itself dispatch into the grid and how they charge from the grid or even renewable generation. So machine learning algorithms already look at what is the state of health, the state of charge of the batteries, and also making sure that when the battery is actually discharging into the grid or even charging, it is not affecting the grid or the renewable generation it is being a part of, but rather not also affecting the battery itself. Because there are enough instances where we have seen that because the charge discharge patterns were not properly regulated, it triggered internal chemical mechanisms inside the battery, which eventually led to performance losses or even safety issues, and the battery did not stay in life for as long as it is needed to. So machine learning algorithms are already taking all these things into account by looking at the grid, by looking at the demand generation, by looking at the battery technical aspects themselves. So it is already bringing all these data points together and then working on this data point, digging deeper and coming up with very interesting insights, which might not be true for other asset classes out there. That's another point. Batteries are more or less like internet of things kind of thing, and it generates a lot of data, tons of data, billions of data points. And if you are able to make use of AI and machine learning in such a way that you can bring all these data points together and make sense of it, you are unlocking a big opportunity there as an entrepreneur. So if you're an entrepreneur who is would like to work on this battery data, you have tons of data but also tons of work to do. So yeah, that would be my perspective.
Awesome. So we have covered a lot in this podcast. So I think I have a very quick sheet of summary. We started with how the batteries are, and you mentioned a very, very interesting point where you said batteries are like time machines in the electrification journey. Then we discussed demand, generation, and transmission of energy as three of the main sectors. And then how can the battery tech be applicable over there? And you also mentioned that it is important to have energy sensitization down to the level of education. So it should be taught in schools. And then we went to grid readiness, by which we wanted to do grid enhancement. We started talking about the cutting of dependence on any one single source of energy, basically diversifying. But while doing that, we are also looking at the energy security part, where batteries can be looked at the prime source for energy security. We also touched upon ancillary services within the wholesale market, as well as the seasonal storage systems. Then we came down to hybrid mechanical battery, which was more of the example around the dam, which renewable sources were used to pump water back to the dam, etc. And you also mentioned how virtual power plants could actually be the future of energy. Then we came down to technologies that are between batteries and what are the abundance of materials in today's day and age which are influencing these technologies. We also spoke about grid being a very risk averse body, and we also discussed two very important German words, and someone who must have heard the podcast must have noted it. So please let us know in the comments. We also learned that batteries are still considered as a load on the grid, while it could be the other way. Batteries could actually ease the grid. And this could be done by grid booster programs, which could be done by taking the batteries to offload the demand peaks. And towards the end, we discussed technologies in terms of helping the energy security as well as the energy industry as a whole, where the ML technologies could help in forecasting errors, and AI and ML technologies together could help on the battery dispatch. I think within the podcast, we have discussed a lot of insightful information. Thank you very much, Swagat, for coming on this podcast and discussing with us.
Pleasure.
And for all of our listeners across the globe, please follow Perspective Club on all media platforms. We are active on LinkedIn. We reply to every DM on Instagram. And you could follow us on any podcast platform. And we are very happy to have you. Plus, let us know in the comments as well as in our DMs how can we improve. The entire season on energy is now coming to an end. So thank you very much for being us through the season. Thank you for all of our guests to be a part of this. Please like, share, and subscribe all of our content, and stay tuned for all of our future content coming forward. Thank you all.